Hey, it's Trevor Russell here. Before we jump into the interview, I just want to remind you that this presentation and its content is for education purposes and general advice only. It does not consider your personal financial circumstances, and no warranty is given for the information provided. Please be responsible, and before making any financial decisions, make sure you understand all your options and what you're considering has the potential to meet your individual investment and wealth creation goals. Always do your research and consult a licensed financial professional who understands all forms of investing. And if you don't have one, you can reach out to us. We have access to a whole team that can assist and guide you with these important decisions. As time goes by and I reflect on my life and going through the highs and the lows, I've come to realize that no matter what's going on in the world, there are always people thriving and doing really well, and there's always a heap of people that are struggling or just surviving. Hi, my name's Trevor Russell and I'm the director of the Results Investment Group. And one of my missions is to help those who want to know the keys that unlock the door to living happier, wealthier, more prosperous, fulfilling lives. And today, I have the great pleasure of introducing you to a good mate of mine that I've known for quite a few years now, quite often from the sidelines, looking and watching. And while he will share what he's going to share with us today, which I'm sure is going to be packed with value, so have a notebook and pen or whatever you use to collect the good information, talking about what you can do to break free from money stress, live a happier life, be more fulfilled, create greater financial independence, no matter where you're starting from. And while he'll share more on that, I've got to say what I've observed with this guy is that he is very direct. He's a no BS guy, but he's also one of these types of chaps that is always willing to help. And that is one of the reasons amongst many that I really respect him. And I'm going to introduce you to my friend Andrew Wright. He's the principal of Southport Professionals. And Andrew has done many things, but I think in the context of this channel, the Money Smart You channel, he has amassed and built a 7+ figure commercial property portfolio with a 7+ figure passive income from those 8-figure portfolio, excuse me, thank you. And he's also got his own podcast called Andrew Wright Property Podcast. You can find him on Spotify, and I'll put the link below. He's also the father of 2 children who are 21 and 20, and he is helping them build a property portfolio. And in this interview, he's going to share how he helped them do that when they couldn't get a loan from the bank. And he's a great guy. So Andrew, over to you.
Thanks, Trevor. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to start off with just that recent experience helping my kids get into property.
Yeah, and look, a guy who works in finance and banking and understands the hurdles that we have to go through to get money for people. Yeah. You help them do it without being able to get a bank loan. Is that right?
They couldn't get a bank loan, so both of my kids have learned early to save, and both Leon and Naomi at 21 and 20 had accumulated more than $50,000 in cash, which in itself is remarkable, because I remember at that age when I saved my first $1,000 how hard it was. But my kids, maybe their father's too generous, doesn't charge them board or rent at home. I don't know how they save so much money. But even with that $50,000 cash, Trevor, with the 5% deposit scheme, we were intending on them getting a traditional bank loan to get into the market. But the serviceability calcs just wouldn't allow them to borrow any more than about $350,000 to $400,000 from memory. So it just wasn't possible to buy any asset that was worth buying. So what I did was I found a deal that came up online, and I thought, why don't I help my kids get into a property? And what we did was, there was 10 acres of industrial land up at Longreach for sale, and the agent told me that the sellers of that property were desperately needing some money for them to go and buy a brand new home because they were moving out of town. It was in Longreach. They needed $80,000. They had this industrial land there, and banks don't lend on empty industrial land unless you can do a full doc loan and you've got plenty of capacity to service it. So they couldn't sell it. So I said to the agent, look, how about we do a deal? We'll buy the land. I'll give them the $80,000 they need as their deposit so they can go and buy a house. But get them to lend us the rest of the money on vendor finance terms, because my kids can't get a loan and I want to buy it with my kids. So what we did was we offered them to pay them back in 3 years' time if they do vendor finance for us. And this is how I got my kids into the property market, Trevor, because they couldn't get a loan. Mm-hmm. And because their needs right now were to have $80,000 as a deposit for themselves to buy a new house. So I said, I'll give you $80,000 at settlement. You lend us the balance and I'll pay you back in 3 years' time. Because what I'm going to do is we're going to get a development approval on this 10 acres of industrial land, and then we can rent it out in 3 years' time, and then we'll qualify for a bank loan, and we'll pay you out the balance. And they agreed to it, and instead of a 3-year term, they gave us a 2-year term. And the interest rate I negotiated, I said, well, if we paid you cash now, you'd only get 4% in a term deposit. How about I pay you more than that? I'll give you 5% interest for the 2 years, and they agreed. So I got my kids in a unit trust. We went 1/3 each in a unit trust, and we bought that site at 5% vendor finance for 2 years. Not only did I get my kids into their first property, but it was cheaper than a bank loan, and we preserved their entitlements to the first homeowners grant and the stamp duty exemptions for later down the track, because all they own now is units in a unit trust. They don't actually own any residential property, and that's how I've helped my kids get in.
Well, anyone listening to this, is that a brain breaker or what? Because I think this is one of the things that I found, and if we talk about that opening statement, if I said it, maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but what is it that the people that are living healthier, wealthier lives doing that the others aren't? And what I continue to learn, where I've done some deals and people that I follow and admire, is, would it be fair to say, Andrew, that it's your willingness to look at things differently, look at things in a more open, creative way? And I think for me, and please tell me what you think, but I feel one of the biggest contributors to people doing better in life is to actually be bothered to do the things that the masses aren't willing to be bothered to do.
You're spot on, Trevor, and one classic example of that. Last year I bought 7 properties for myself. I didn't use one bank loan, not once. In fact, I couldn't get a bank loan on any of them. Even at my level, my serviceability is capped. And doing a full doc loan, even I couldn't borrow any more. In fact, the broker that I went through at that time, which wasn't you at that time, he said, Andrew, you've got to stop borrowing money because you've got no more serviceability. So unfortunately for him, he couldn't get any more business from me because the banks wouldn't lend money. But I didn't stop there. I got creative, and I've used vendor finance, long settlements, joint ventures, and private money loans to buy 7 properties last year without a bank.
Hey, it's Trevor here, just jumping in quickly, just to do a quick review of what we've just gone through, because I'm aware that what Andrew is sharing, for some, could be a bit advanced. It could be, what the hell, how would I ever do that? That's all well and good for him. He can do that. I could never do that, which I completely understand if you feel that way. I know we're in tough times for many people, that we've got all these concerns with government and economy and income and living expenses and all that stuff. If you want to get ahead financially and you want to start taking this information and start putting it into use, you don't need to know all those answers and all those strategies just yet. The 2 key areas that I would have you consider doing is this. The first thing is getting clear on knowing what your income and expenses are and looking at what you can do to start lowering those expenses and start, if you can, where possible, increasing that income so that you can get into the green profit zone. The way to get ahead is to firstly know your numbers. If you can do that, that's going to really help you as one of your basic key steps. The next thing I'll say is, if you want, I've got a guide called The Secrets of the Modern Wealthy. Ditch the worry, create the business, career, income, and the life you want. If you want a copy of that guide, send me an email. My details are below. We can have a chat about what's going on for you, and maybe we can help. But if nothing else, Andrew and I and my friends and colleagues, we just want to help people get money smart. There are so many things that people can do that very often are just not aware of what to do. So if you'd like a copy of that guide, send me an email, and let's get back to the interview. We both met going back probably early 2000s, 2005, 2004 maybe.
1998 I joined PIS, I'm not sure when.
And I joined them 2002.
There we go.
And Andrew had built a substantial, without going into all the minutiae of the structure, Andrew had a financial planning business, I had a finance mortgage broker business, and we both kind of sat under the management of this aggregation business called Professional Investment Services. And we were in a time where there was a lot of great things going on. You could do really well, you could make a lot of money, but there was also a lot of things that you could just do because it was a different landscape back then. And I got to know Andrew fairly well through going to a lot of overseas holidays and events, but
conferences, not holidays.
Conferences. That's right. Sorry. Yes, conferences. I do remember.
Did you say junket?
junket. But I had a little bit of an opportunity to see Andrew's business and what he did, but then for both of us and many people, the environment changed. The GFC came in. There were many factors that, Andrew, can I tell you quickly? I remember sitting on the lounge room floor at home here in Burleigh. We both live in Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia. And I was sitting on the floor watching SBS or something, eating dinner, and they were talking about this thing called the global financial crisis. And I just felt this intuitive pit in the belly of my stomach, which was, this ain't going to be good. And because we were both invariably kind of related or indirectly related to the whole finance sector, and that's a whole other story in itself, but it changed a lot of things for many people. But Andrew, to cut to where I want to go with this opening of this part of the chat is, I know that affected your business, and then you pivoted. Can you just, and I kind of am imagining that it might have been a bit challenging at that time for you.
Yeah, I lost everything. I had about $15 million of assets in my mid-30s and seven-figure income from my financial planning business. I had over $1 million a year on my tax return in my early and mid-30s 20 years ago, which is probably more than $2 million in today's terms. I'm not saying that to boast, but when I went from there and the GFC hit and we had to sell our business because we were litigation coming from everywhere, from investments that went south. I lost my income and I lost all my assets through the GFC, through my own fault, through gambling on the stock market and taking massive leverage positions. So yeah, I bought this business I have now on my credit card, Trevor. I bought it for $15,000 on my credit card. I lost a lot. And then I had to work through 5 years before I made any money in real estate as well. So
you pivoted from financial planning into
real
residential real estate?
Residential real estate, that's right.
And you still obviously have that business running
that's
too?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And because look, I went through a similar thing, not to that magnitude financially, but still it's all relative. I had 5 houses. I'd bought a house for my mum. And we're not saying any of this that may sound like brag or anything. I mean, they were accomplishments that we were able to achieve at the time relative to who we were. But then having to, for me, sell those assets. And I honestly had a complete nervous breakdown. I was in a really dark place, but fortunately managed to get out of it. And I think this is one of the things that I find so interesting, Andrew, and really wanted to kind of dive into this with you is, what is it that what is the mindset of people that, because let's face it, we all get challenged with tough times. We all have things that go on in our lives. And what is it that has some people continue to move forward, pivot, change, and process that and utilize this machine we've all been given, this mind of ours, to go on and survive and even very often thrive even better because we've learnt, and others don't. But I'd really just love to get a bit of insight into your mind and how do you think about these things? What do you do? What are some things you could share with us that we could go and use and apply?
Yeah, well, I don't like to recall negative moments in my life, but we'll go through it because it has a positive intent. I mean, at that time in 2008, I literally was in bed not wanting to get up the next morning because we were getting sued by litigation. Takes years and years and years to finish, and I was literally scared to go to the mailbox every day to see what was coming. I didn't want to answer phone calls because every single day I was spending 5 or 6 hours a day dealing with legal issues for a number of years, and I didn't want to get out of bed the next morning. But my number one motivation, I kept saying to myself, was imagine how proud you will be when you get through this and get through it, and then eventually get to a point where you can re-establish your asset base. And the most important motivation I had was, in all honesty, looking at my two little kids of 2 or 3 years of age and thinking, do I want my kids to look at me as a quitter or someone that fought through this? And that was, in all honesty, that was the number one motivation I had, Trevor, is I just didn't want my kids to think I was a loser. That's it. Like, there's no deep and meaningful philosophy
it's that simple.
here. That's it.
Yeah.
My kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. So really having that, if we can just summarize those key learnings there, is that it's how you talk to yourself and the reason that is going to motivate you to do what you might not want to do or fear stopping you from doing. And I can so relate. I think for me, recently I went through a bit of a business challenge that really destabilized me, and one of the core reasons that I've been able to keep moving forward is it's the respect of my woman. I would rather be a survivor and go do what I've got to do to keep moving forward, because her opinion of me matters so much, and that's almost beyond my own opinion of myself. And I think that has been a very and you don't quite realize at the time, do you, how powerful it is, those little things. And I think if anyone's listening to this, and if you're going through a time where you could be feeling challenged or scared or confused, what could be that driving reason that would have you do the things that feel really uncomfortable? Because that's the next thing that I'd like to ask you, Andrew, is we all have this emotion called fear. And the fear of, making a call to someone that you might think you'd be able to do business with or do a deal with or do a sale to or something, and fear's telling you not to do it, or to do an interview, or to go launch something or get a better job or whatever it is. Hey, I can see you've got this property for sale, and you'll present them with an offer and a structure, and many people, and I think you said in the interview, you did X amount of calls. How many calls did you do? And you got like 100 no's, or?
Oh, that one was that deal we just talked about with my kids before. I had at least 20 no's in a row for vendor finance, because it's very unusual to buy a property with vendor finance, where the seller actually lends you the money. So in that podcast I mentioned, I had at least 20 rejections there, and that was the 21st one I got a yes.
Yeah. I'll put that interview link below, by the way, anyone listening to this.
Yeah.
So most people would probably give up at 2, no disrespect, but it's tough, 20 no's.
Yeah.
What kept you going?
Well, there was no choice. I couldn't afford to buy that property without the vendor finance.
But you were determined to have that property.
Determined to have a property. Now I could have
for your kids.
For my kids, yeah. probably could have got private money and paid 10 or 12% interest.
Yeah.
But that would have been the last resort to get us into it, because obviously if I could negotiate a lower interest rate than 10 or 12% from a private money lender, the cash flows are going to work out a lot better. So that would have been the next step. If they didn't do vendor finance, I would have gone to a mate and said, will you lend me 70% on this property at 10 or 12% interest? I still would have done the deal. But vendor finance is a better option at 5% interest.
Oh, definitely. So would it be fair to say that when you decide that you're going to do something, that you are determined to stick with it till it's done?
Yeah, the most satisfying thing building a property portfolio is when you can think creatively to get a deal done when the bank says no.
Yeah, it's almost like a challenge that you've got to figure out.
Yeah, and in the last year, as I mentioned, I've done joint ventures where I've put not 1 cent of my own money into it, where I've bought deals that have done very, very well. I've had long settlements, and I've used private money lenders to get deals done when the banks won't lend.
So we've both been in the business of money for a while, and I'm sure you can relate to this when I have conversations with certain people. Like, one of the areas that me and my team specialise in is helping people use their super to invest into property for many, many positive reasons, for the right people in the right situation at the right time with the right money. But it's so interesting to hear people's thoughts around the fears of, oh my God, can I do this? And is it illegal? But isn't it meant to be done that way? And I can't do this. Whereas others go, makes sense. So for you, when you're going through that process and you're looking at these structures and deals, I guess it's kind of a similar question, but what's going through your mind when you're structuring this? And someone else might go, not possible, you can't do it, whereas you're going completely, you're obviously thinking very differently about it.
Yeah, there's two responses there to that question. How you structure it is, I guess, something that most normal people would need accounting and legal advice around. But in that regard, I'd say going forward from the budget, it would seem to me that self-managed super funds are nearly untouched with the regulations. So if you can pay 0% tax in a pension fund down the track when you crystallise a capital gain, there can't be a better tax rate than zero.
Exactly.
15% maximum tax in accumulation phase, and still only 10% on capital gains after 12 months, which doesn't seem to be targeted by the last budget. So going forward, I think you're in the right business there, Trevor, going forward, because accountants are going to continue to recommend self-managed super funds for that reason. Outside of super, from a structural point of view, I think we'll start seeing a lot more companies being recommended by accountants, because the proposal is to tax trusts at a fixed 30%, which is the same as a company. But a company, if structured the right way, keeps the franking credits, and you can pay yourself fully franked dividends down the track and claw back some of that tax that you've actually paid. So from a structural point of view, I would say that. But from a mindset point of view about buying property, that's where you've just got to think creatively about how can I finance it. Because I hit the wall, as I said, over a year ago. My broker said, no, the banks won't lend you any more money. But I just bought another 7 properties when he said you won't get any more loans. So you've got to have a mindset. If you're good at finding a deal, you've just got to say, well, how can I do this? And for the people listening here, if you're just thinking, oh, that's okay for you, Andrew, but I couldn't do that. Well, what you could do is just go into a joint venture with Trevor or your brother or your sister or your family, or get a loan from the bank of mum and dad and get the ball rolling, even if you don't own 100%. Get the ball rolling, and there's no point listening to another 20 podcasts unless you're prepared to get the ball rolling and actually do something.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. And if I can add to that, I don't want to steal Andrew's thunder, but aligning with what he said, one of the things that I've learnt from someone who I can't remember right now, he said, if you want to build a happier, healthier, wealthier life, you've got to ask yourself better questions. And I'm actually asking myself some pretty out there questions at the moment, but if I can share, Andrew, one of the questions that I asked about 15 years ago was, how can I have staff that work for me and an office that I don't pay rent and I don't pay wages? Pretty out there question to ask, right? And I kept asking, how can I have an office? Because I was working from home at the time. This is back PIS days. I was working from home and I realized it wasn't good for my mental health. I needed to be around people and for all the other reasons, but my budget at the time just didn't look like it was going to work to pay rent and employ people. And so I kept asking, how can I have an office, not pay rent, and have someone help me manage my clients' loans and all the back end stuff so I can go out and generate more business? And I kept asking, and then...
Yes,
so
Alco.
That's right. So I was at one of our PD, professional development days, and I got this idea to go up, and because the gentleman who owned our licensing company, he had a little office here in Queensland that he managed, and he had some staff in there and they worked for him, and I knew one of the team members who was in there, and I just got this idea to go up to her and say, hey, can I come work from the office, and can your team manage and process my loans, and I'll give you a % of all the business that I write, and if I don't write anything, I don't give you anything. And she said, let me ask the big boss, and she did. He said yes. So I ended up working from an office that I paid no rent, and I kind of paid staff, but I paid a small nominal % to have them really manage everything after I got the client. So I guess where I'm going is, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I couldn't do this, or how's that, what I would suggest, Andrew, and if you could add to this, is ask yourself better questions. How can I? How could I make my life better? How could I get out of this hole? How could I improve things? What could I do? And I'm just going to say, it's astounding what the brain will come up with.
I'm really impressed with your question, Trevor, and the reason I'm impressed is I've actually drawn a blank, and I can't even answer that because I've never thought about that in depth. My why is to get $100 million in debt for my kids. Okay, that's the end result. Now, does that sound crazy? You'll probably have your listeners turn off now. Most people say, oh yeah, when you retire, you don't want to have any debt. My big goal is, and I don't talk about it often, is if I can have $100 million of debt, I'm going to have a $200 to $300 million property portfolio. And guess what? If I die and those assets pass on to my kids, every decade that goes by, those assets are likely to double. And even if it was only $200 million of property with $100 million of debt, if we wait 10 years down the track, that $100 million of debt will still be $100 million if I'm paying interest only, and the $200 million property will be worth $400 million. $400 million with $100 million of debt, and another 10 years down the track after I'm dead, that $400 million will be worth $800 million, and I'll still only have $100 million of debt. So the big game for me is if land in this country and other countries has doubled every 10 years, it would seem to be, in a historical context, that going forward, it is probably fair and reasonable to assume that land prices will double again in 10 years, if not maybe 15. So the question becomes, how much land do you want to own?
Do you know why I'm so passionate about self-managed super funds and property ownership in it for people? Because it's the time for money formula that people are almost forced into. Because I have now, and look, if I had kept all the properties that I'd owned, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you, Andrew. But I've now hopefully figured out one thing, which is it is time of ownership and control of assets that is the key. And why I've just helped a client of mine. She's early 40s. She works in property. She's a BDM. She makes, let's say, all up with some commissions, she's probably on 110K a year. It's an okay income, but pretty standard for most people in that industry at this time in their life. We've helped her buy a $500,000 apartment in Victoria with the rent, all the figures. If she just takes care of that apartment and hangs onto it for 20 2 years, that property we estimate conservatively worth about 4.3 million, debt-free, with a passive growing income, which will be in six figures by then, just by buying that property and sitting on it and leaving it alone. Whereas what do people do? I see it all the time. They've got such itchy feet. Oh, I've got to change it, and I've got to sell it, and I've got to do this. And I get life events happen, but because one of my goals is to help 100 Australians retire financially rich and enjoy retirement that they deserve.
Focusing on the right structure, because unless people have a condition of release, they can't get that money out.
They're locked in, right? And they're forced to hold it.
That's one.
But can I add on to one more thing what you said here?
Yeah.
If anyone's listening to this, if you think about Andrew's numbers, he's saying 100 million, 300 million. But you think about most people's situation, that could be 1 million, 3 million. Or it could be 100,000, 300,000. So all we're really doing here is adding more zeros, but it's the same model. Because Andrew, I'm with you. One of the things that I've learned that richer, healthier, wealthier people do is they're good savers. They budget their money, they know what's going in, they know what's going out, and a lot of them are not huge income earners, but they've learned to put money away to get that first one and keep it and hold it and let time do its thing. Whereas what I'm hearing with you is there's just more zeros added to it.
Yes, well, you're on the right track with your clients, Trevor, because great. But the fact that they can't pull the money out of super until they meet a condition of release is one thing. But let me tell you, if you keep helping people like you're helping now, if you're still alive and healthy in 20 years' time, you're going to start getting testimonials from these people that have actually started a pension and then sold assets and said, Trev, thank you so much for putting me into these properties in my super fund, because guess what, I just sold it. I 3 or 4x my money, and guess what? It was tax exempt because I've started a pension when I sold this asset. And we're not allowed to give structural advice here. We're not accountants and lawyers, but let me tell you, that strategy is so powerful that you will get so many testimonials 10 and 20 years down the track from the strategy you're implementing.
Do you think any will take me to Bali for a surfing holiday? Because I'll be 82, I think, at that time.
Well, I think you've actually written it into your agreements in the fine.
Yeah, I think I should. But all jokes aside, I know I can share this with you, Andrew, with this passion this is what I want for people. I want them to have this knowledge and understanding. Sure, you've got very specific skills and experience that may not be for most people, and that's fine. But what I do know is there's always a way to do something better, somewhere, somehow, if you really want to, relative to you, relative to the person. And I just feel that a good something done is better than the perfect that's never. And okay, Andrew's sharing some what I consider more advanced investing strategies, but even that one model to say, I'm going to carry that debt because I know that it's a 30% of the overall asset that is going to go up in value. And it's a very doable goal. And someone could do this themselves with one property and hold it and do it. So it's the same thing. But Andrew, coming back to you, where you're at now and what you're doing, and all that you've learned, what would be some words of wisdom that you could share with people listening to this interview where they may be worried about the government, proposed changes, whether they come in or not? There's always these things that are going on around us. Someone who's looking for a few things to just help them move forward in more confident ways to make their life better, emotionally, financially. What would be some tips that you could share with them?
Look, I really just think get started. Like, honestly, don't keep listening to podcasts and do something. Like, I'd love to be brave enough to be a bit direct with that answer and say, look, if you're listening to this podcast, set a goal to make an offer on a property in the next 1 month. I know that sounds a bit aggressive.
No, not at all. I get it.
You've got to actually do something, not just listen to podcasts. Actually get out and do something. And if you can't afford to do it, talk to Trevor, talk to your brother, talk to your best mate, go in a joint venture with someone, go out and buy a property. I mean, right now, there's deals to be had. I just bought a couple of sheds the night before the budget because I encouraged the seller to sign a contract so that they could lock in their 50% capital gains tax discount, because that's going to be gone in a year's time. I thought it might be gone on the budget day on the 12th of May. So on the 11th of May, the day before, I said to the seller, look, why don't you sell me these 2 sheds and you can lock in for yourself and your family the 50% capital gains tax, because who knows, they might get rid of that down the track and you'll be up for a lot more tax. So the guy, I got a good deal. He signed the contract with a long 7-month settlement because I couldn't get a bank loan on it. Yeah. So what I've done is I got a 7-month loan on it to give me time to get a lease doc loan on it once we lease one of the sheds. And he also saved $40,000 in commissions and marketing costs because there was no agent involved. So I saved him 40 grand of costs, and I've locked in his 50% capital gains tax for him and his family. And I've got a great deal on a couple of sheds for $1,025,000. The replacement value is probably $2 million. Just win-win for all of us.
Yeah, I love it. If anyone wants to hear more case study examples of what Andrew does to put deals together, send me a message or put it in the chat below, and I'll see if I can get him in for another chat and we can break down some deals and have a look at them. Would that be okay?
Great. Sounds great.
Andrew, so thank you for sharing that, and I think that I'll definitely be hanging out with you more and picking your brain on those deals. I just want to pull something out here that I think is so important for people to hear, and this is something that's been very helpful to me, and this is a real straight chat here about how to get smarter with money. And I'm going to say what I hear in this, Andrew, is, and if we can just give it the attention that it needs, is it's the ability to pick a direction, set a goal, and stick with it, and be willing to, I call it getting out on the skinny branches, getting a bit uncomfortable, getting a bit scared. I'm doing some work with some friends of mine at the moment. They teach people how to trade the futures market, and they're an education institution, they're traders. What they do works really well. They've been running for 13 years, they're compliant, they're a straight shooting organisation. And we've been looking at a few things to help them with helping their clients secure some finance so that they can do the training, start trading, and make it possible for them, because not everyone has $5,000-$10,000 just to go and start studying. And I've been listening to different people who are inquiring and wanting to know about this, and they're so afraid to just make a decision and back themselves. They're so trying to find everything for free. They're looking at all the, like you just said, looking at all the YouTube videos. And one gentleman I actually spoke to myself, because we were doing some research to see what we could do to make it work for these people, is I said, what's your concern about just making a decision? While you feel afraid, while you feel uncertain, while you have no idea whether you're going to be able to do it or not, but making the decision to just pick something and go with it. And he said, I'm afraid I'm going to fail. And I think this is one of the greatest challenges for people is, and I think I know how you're going to respond to this, but what would you just say to someone who, like you've said, set a goal, go do something, but they've got this fear around failing?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is I almost bet everything I have to say that I failed a lot more than that guy.
Yeah.
And the old basketballer Michael Jordan, I think, has missed more shots than any other player and became the best player ever. And to me, you've just got to keep going, and you've got to keep failing to learn so that you sharpen your skills and you become better. And my biggest mindset around continuing to invest, even I've lost many millions of dollars on the stock market, and one of the things that kept me going is, in all honesty, like, I'm not here to motivate people to go out and work forever. I don't like working. I don't even like being a real estate agent. What keeps me here is continuing to generate a cash flow so I can buy more assets that produce a passive income. Because guess what? One day I don't want to keep working, or if I become sick next year and you can't work, you've got to sit down, and I'd encourage the people listening to this now to write down a number right in front of them right now. If you stop work tomorrow, how much passive income is your investment portfolio going to provide to you so that you and your family can live off? Now, I think most people will probably say zero or negative, but my whole motivation to continue working is to continue generating a cash flow, to save up more deposits, to buy more properties so I can develop passive income. I have no ego at all about making $1 million a year or $2 million a year in your business, because that doesn't mean anything. You end up paying a heap of tax and it's not recurring. The only thing that matters from a financial point of view is how much passive income have I developed. Because once you get sick or old and you can't work anymore, it doesn't matter if you earn $1 million a year or 150. It means absolutely nothing, and that's why I don't care about winning any awards, about trying to be the best salesman and this or that. The only thing that matters is your family's financial future, and to secure that you need to generate a passive income. And if you don't start buying assets, whether it's shares or property or something that generates an income.
Andrew, thank you for your time. In closing, we've got some things that are proposed out there in the world economically around us with the government and different things that I've got a whole opinion on, but I just don't want to go there. But what would you say to anyone that could be a bit concerned about all that?
Look, I just got a little bit of philosophy, and that is with ordinary talent and extraordinary perseverance, all things are attainable. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So take the first step. You've got no choice, have you? So let's push forward.
Man, I can't say anything else after that. That's a great close.
Thanks, Trevor, and thank you for offering to teach me how to dance like a pro. I can't wait to be great at ballroom dancing like you.
Oh, thanks, Andrew. You're a good man. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Andrew. And for those of you listening, I've put some links to Andrew's podcast below. We can get you together. We can do this again another time, talk more about deals. And guys, if you've got any questions or things that you want to ask, please do so. And I'm sure I can get these to Andrew, and give us a like and subscribe, and we can then share more good stuff with you. But in closing, what I would like to say is this. Remember, you have done the most amazing things. Whatever you may consider being important or unimportant, big or little, for some people, just getting a job can be an amazing thing. Getting married, buying a house, paying off a debt, picking a new career, having children, paying your bills. These are no small feats. And I want to just remind you that you've done the most amazing things. No matter who you are, you've done good things, you've overcome challenging things. And if you're still here, which I'm assuming you are if you're listening to me and Andrew, you can do the most amazing things. So remember that, pick a direction and go. And as Andrew said, you've got to take that step and commit to it. And I've found long after the motivation's gone. Keep going. Thanks.